I see these tobacco strains being used by lobbyists who weren't born when we created them, I mean, I have to tell you, I laugh at it.
Laws, treaties, and regulations, why won't that save us?
I immediately came to the conclusion that you and your friends in AI safety have noble goals, but you haven't won, and nor are you going to so long as the industry controls the politics. But truth be known, killing the legislation's always been very easy.
Welcome to For Humanity and AI Risk Podcast, episode number 77. New laws and treaties will not save us. I'm John Sherman, your host. I'm also the president of the AI Risk Network. Thank you so much for joining. Here, we are making AI extinction risk and AI harm approachable to everyone. No tech background required. Please hit subscribe right now if you have not already. Happy 2026, my friends. This is our first show of the new year. I need to set up this interview a little bit, so please bear with me. This is the most important interview and show we have ever done. In a few minutes, you will meet Peter Sparber, a man I met first in late October, who has fundamentally changed the way I view the best path forward to preventing superintelligence. So who is Peter Sparber? He was a key architect of Big Tobacco's decades-long war on regulation. The work he and his team did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was featured in the Hollywood films Thank You for Smoking and Merchants of Doubt. Their strategy of creating fear, uncertainty, and doubt successfully held off meaningful tobacco regulation for decades. Peter says big AI is following the playbook he helped to write. What you're about to watch is only the second interview Peter Sparber has ever done. The last was in 1986 with a trade publication. Why does Peter Sparber care about AI safety? A mutual friend introduced us in October. Before that, Peter didn't really know or care about AI safety much at all. He's 78 years old and leading a lovely life in retirement with his family. Let me tell you a little bit about how I came to meet Peter. So Guardrail Now is a nonprofit that funds the AI Risk Network. Fundraising for Guardrail Now is a part of my responsibilities. I, in my effort to do that, tapped a friend who has experience fundraising, and he was able to plug me into some networks of his and meet people to solicit donations for Guardrail Now. Okay, one of those was a group of high net wealth individuals. I flew out to meet with them, sat with them, about 14 people, did a coffee with them, passed them out Ellie Iser's book, and more than half of them totally bought the extinction risk case. They were like, oh my God. What can we do about this? What can we do about this, John? And so I told them what AI safety tells them. Well, you can reach out to your elected leader. You can make a contribution to an organization like ours. You could volunteer, or you could, tell a friend and help spread the word. These are all very serious people. And they were like, what are you talking about? That sucks. What do you mean? What do you mean that's what we can do? We're all going to die soon, and you want to send a letter or write a check or tell a friend? It was a rude awakening. My fundraiser and I thought about it for a week or two, and he got an idea. There's this guy I worked with on a project before. We've worked on several projects. His name's Peter Sparber. He'll come at this differently. He'll see this differently. How would he see this problem? So he introduced us. We got on a Zoom, and I was immediately sold. Peter is doing this because it's interesting. AI safety is, in my opinion, very fortunate to have captured his attention. He has two sons who are creatives and don't like AI. He lives in Northern Virginia where hundreds of data centers are blighting the landscape. So he does care about this, but I worked with Peter daily for 2 months intensely. Nights, weekends, him teaching me about his playbook and how he sees the world, and me getting him up to speed on the AI safety world. His ideas shake the very foundation of the AI safety movement. Take a few moments to pause and breathe. If you are firmly entrenched in new laws and treaties as you hear this stuff, just breathe. Listen to him with an open mind. As you hear this stuff, I know this is a rainstorm on the mainstream AI safety parade. I get it. But after the rain, the sun comes out, right? And there is very real sun here. So you tell me, listen to this interview and tell me how you feel about it in the comments. Afterwards, I will have some more on how Peter's ideas are going to be influencing what I do in 2026 and how you can help. So, with no further delay and apologies for the Zoom-grade quality of this call from Rome, my interview with public affairs strategy legend, Peter Sparber. Peter Sparber, welcome to For Humanity. I am thrilled to have you here. For the audience, Peter and I have been talking to each other pretty intensely here for the last couple of months, and it has been a really, really eye-opening and almost revolutionary set of ideas that you have brought to me, and I want to bring to the audience and to AI safety in general. So before we get into sort of who you are and your background, I want to get right to the top line that I think is the most important, and that is that the field of AI safety has thought forever, since I've been involved in it, and for 20 years, has hung their hopes of saving humanity on laws, regulations, and treaties. New laws, regulations, and treaties. And the idea that you introduced to me that I think is so important is that may just not work at all. So Peter, if you would, just sort of laws, treaties, and regulations, why won't that save us?
When you raised this with me back, gosh, it was November, it took me maybe half an hour on Google to see that the strategies that the AI industry is using are pretty much what we invented back in the 1980s to defend tobacco. There were years we faced hundreds of federal, state, and even local bills, and we almost never lost. The lobbyists using them today probably don't even know their origins or the thinking that went into it. We're talking 2-3 generations have passed since. But these strategies, even when they're used really in sort of a plain vanilla way, are still effective because they force one's adversaries to fight battles they can't win. And so I immediately came to the conclusion that you and your friends in AI safety have noble goals, but you haven't won, and nor are you going to, so long as the industry controls the politics.
I mean, this is a bedrock principle. Like, I've been talking to people about this in AI safety for, and when I say to them, there's this guy that I'm talking to who was a key architect of Big Tobacco's war on regulation, and he says that AI safety's focus on new laws, treaties, and regulations is hopeless. It knocks over the apple cart of the whole thing, and so I just really want to get into it in as much depth as possible. Start out by talking about the Big Tobacco playbook that Big AI is using against AI safety so effectively.
Sure. Well, when you asked me to do this interview, and let me just say, I don't give interviews, John. I haven't given interviews ever. I went back and read some notes. Now, to put this in context, having just watched the Steelers lose and my Packers lose and the Eagles blessedly losing, I got thinking about the average NFL team, which has something like 100 passing plays and maybe 40 running plays and then thousands of variations. And we had many, many strategies, which we used depending on the situation. But in reading about the AI industry, there were 7 really basic strategies that really stood out, things that we used routinely, and they're kind of they're just sort of all over the lot. But bear with me. Let's start with public opinion.
Yeah,
I think the average person and many executives that I have advised believe that it all starts with public opinion. That if enough people and enough voters are of a mind that something should happen, it invariably happens. And I've never seen it. It doesn't happen. Back in the day, everyone hated cigarette companies. I mean, smokers hated us because they wanted to quit. I had more people come to me saying, "Oh, what you have to do is mobilize smokers," and I thought, they, they hate us. They absolutely hate us. Tobacco farmers, they were angry about the prices their crops were getting from the cigarette companies and the fact the cigarette companies were buying tobacco from China and Brazil. And so you'd think these are natural constituencies. Not at all. And the average American um, just didn't like us because we're big business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we couldn't win a popularity contest, so we ignored the public opinion. It never really mattered to us. The AI companies are ignoring it now. Outside of a handful of communities fighting data centers, and they just sort of crop up here and there, these companies aren't even dealing with anger so much as public confusion, which I think plays to their best interest.
Yeah.
Um, I don't see any evidence the AI companies care about public opinion. And as it stands, I'm not sure it even matters. But let's get into
And
what
even
this.
just real quick, even as far as like making politicians do the right thing, like, the theory goes, you get the public all whipped up and they go to the politicians and they say, we're mad about this and you need to do this. And then the politicians do it with a smart law and the world is better.
Well, consider it from the politician standpoint. Member of Congress has, unless they're really senior in a leadership position, they have a handful of staff people. They're getting swamped with mail. Swamped. Most of it is canned. Most of it is identical letters signed by people, and they throw all that stuff out. Um, there are techniques that get their opinion, um, but it's very, very hard. And they're also more interested in playing ball with their colleagues than they are. If voters in their community know what they tell them during campaigns. That's about it. So, yeah, you would think so. You would hope so. It doesn't really work, except in some very, very extreme cases where there's real local concerns, really serious local concerns, and even then, it's hard. But there's more to this. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
please go back
discuss
to
it.
your list. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, I'm just telling
Yeah.
you this
Yeah.
stuff off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about lobbying.
Okay.
Basically, hiring people, most of whom once worked for Congress, go off and make a ton of money.
Yep.
And lobbying is important. Now, starting with treaties, I mean, I was involved fairly deeply in two of them. I very rarely saw other American lobbyists involved. Um, Treaties, I think, are a joke for the most part. Endless talk, very small decisions, almost no follow through. And you look at something like climate change, which is, I mean, public opinion about climate change actually is alarming. How many people are concerned about it? Good reason, I think. But the U.S. didn't even ratify this treaty, even with Clinton, Obama, and Biden in the White House. And so treaties, there are some treaties that are important. Commercial airline safety is governed by a treaty. People really pay attention to it for good reason. But I'd be hard pressed to name a whole lot of them. A lot of the uh, ballistic missile treaties and stuff. I don't know. It's really hard to say. But who is actually abiding by treaties is always open to question. So let's move to laws and regulations.
Okay.
I don't think it's much different. Back in the day, we used our money, and we had lots of money to retain the best lobbying firms, Democrats and Republicans, everywhere we expected legislation. We covered all bases, and when we hired a firm, and I mean we were doing it in places like Helena, Montana. I mean, you name it, we had lobbyists. They were there, but they were conflicted out of representing other interests. So if somebody wanted to come in and hire them to go after us, they weren't allowed to even take those accounts because we already had them. It takes a lot of money to do that, but that's basically what we had. But truth be known, killing legislation's always been very easy. Passing it's very hard. In my entire career in Washington, I think I got two pieces of legislation passed and killed hundreds. I mean, it's just
Much
that
easier
way.
to
That's the way
destroy
it
than to
goes.
build.
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. And so you look at the AI companies. Now, they're able to make huge campaign contributions to both Democrats and Republicans, and they have done both. Back in the 80s, corporate contributions were prohibitive. We didn't hardly even have a PAC in
Mhm.
tobacco. Um, but we had smart guys who could lobby. Today, it's the Wild West. Corporations are allowed to, but most of the AI company contributions are coming from individuals. I don't remember the guy's name, but he's the CEO of OpenAI. Just gave Trump 35 million bucks. But a lot of these guys made huge contributions to Democrats first, and then quickly over to Trump and some Republicans. But when I see both California Governor Gavin Newsom and President Trump getting big contributions from the same guys, that is
Yep.
basically the same coverall basis strategy we used just by hiring all the lobbying firms. Um, and I don't know whether they are hiring lots of lobbying firms. It wouldn't surprise me. Um, and they're not fighting in as many places as we did, but they certainly could. I just haven't had a chance to look at it. So, okay, so with lobbying, third, we refused to debate the real issues. We were the absolute masters of deflecting questions, and then listen to the AI industry. Lots of generalities. All of them are
Oh yeah.
committed to safety. What would you expect them to say? I mean, everyone is in favor of safety, like everyone is in favor of tasty food. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. It means different
Yeah.
things to different people, so it means nothing. We refuse to get pulled into substance, and so do they. It's not hard to do because an awful lot of you get asked by a journalist, and the journalist has 3 minutes, and it's just not there to do. In a congressional hearing, a lot of congressional hearings actually are choreographed to the point where the people being interrogated, so to speak, wrote the questions that they're answering. Um, Fourth, we played what we called volleyball. We would convince Congress that the states were dealing with cigarettes, and then the Congress was doing it. Everybody's lazy. Neither one really wanted to take the lead.
Oh yeah. This is
So
someone else. They
often
got
neither
it.
one
They
did.
got it. No, they got it.
Yeah, and the AI industry is absolutely doing this. Fifth, if a bill started to make progress, we would load it down with language that caused it to lose support. That's called a poison pill strategy, or language that made it ineffective. So I'll give you an example. We knew, well, this was before I was there, tobacco knew that some kind of regulation was inevitable. So back in the early 70s, the cigarette companies worked with the gun and booze lobbies to create the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which is one of the most toothless agencies in the federal government. It took 37 years for the FDA to start looking at cigarettes, and guns are still not regulated by Washington. So you just sort of move it to some
And
place
that
where
is
it's actually
because, and to be clear, the reason why those things that are clear public health hazards have not been regulated meaningfully is because of the power of the industries behind them, right? And that is the
yes,
parallel to here. It's like big tobacco, big gun, big AI.
sure.
The public
But
can't.
not every, but yeah, and Big Pharma, by the way, has gotten very good. And some of the best people we had, um, some of their best people are people who actually do know a lot about how we did this. Some of them, one or two, are almost the same people, guys that are older but are still working in pharma. Um, Other big industries don't have a clue, and waste a lot of money. But let me make a jump back over to AI. The industry supported the creation of an AI safety department at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which looked really good, except it has zero regulatory authority. It's a
Yeah. Oh, it's a
it's a think
doesn't
tank.
even have a
It's a
head now.
very Yeah, it's a think tank. Well, not only that, but they changed it from
Yeah.
looking at safety to stripping out regulations from what I Now that's straight out of our tobacco playbook. Six, um, push comes to shove, agree
And
to
hold on, Peter,
anything.
real quick, back to five rules. So basically, you're saying that the change from the AI Safety Institute, which under the previous administration was created, the new administration comes in, they change it to something that is about leadership and security, and basically a pro-industry group. And you're saying that that is just sort of a typical AI safety typical big tobacco playbook. Take the government agency that's charged with doing the policing and turn the policeman into a robber.
Yeah, I said that, the average NFL team has 100 passing plays, 40, and variations. You're looking at what's happening and you're quickly adapting to it, and you take what you can get. But moving this important function, AI safety, into NIST at one level actually is amazing, because NIST is an extraordinarily competent agency. It just doesn't regulate anything. And so it's a great place to put it. But then what happened in this administration is they took it even further. And so it's something else. It's something else that we did. We never quit. If we thought we had a small loss, even, we would do everything we could to turn it into a win. And so what I read was that in this administration, they're using that agency to find regulations that could hurt AI and get them stripped out. It's just the complete opposite of what was intended. But don't forget that the original sin was done under Biden. The original, putting it in this in the first place was done under Biden. So I'm not going to point fingers at Democrats or Republicans, at least not here, except to say that I don't see any politicians particularly on the side of AI safety.
No,
Nobody.
you're absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah. So let me move on here. So at number six, basically, if you get pushed into a corner, agree to anything, but then do nothing. And many laws and regulations are not even enforced, so why bother? When the cigarette companies ultimately had to pay billions of dollars, 123 billion or something, I think that's probably low, to the states as a settlement of a major case that the attorneys general brought. That money was supposed to pay for anti-smoking messages. Almost none of it was. It was all siphoned off for all sorts of other stuff, because our lobbyists made sure that happened, because they didn't want our money being used to work against the industry. And so
you're saying, you're saying that the settlement money that was supposed to go to a bunch of anti-smoking stuff, you guys were actually lobbying to make sure that didn't even happen with the settlement money. Just cutting the legs out.
It wasn't hard, because the states all were strapped for cash and they just took the money. And the anti-smoking guys,
right, and they can put it over, pay for this other thing or this other thing. That's great.
And also there would be all these different other special interests, like teachers, you name it. I mean, you name it, screaming for more money. It wasn't hard to do. So yeah, I mean, it's just it's like adjusting game plan at halftime. So, and let's say a law does get passed and you really hate it. You got the budget of the enforcement agency. That's going on right now. It's very, very common. It's always been common, with lots and lots of examples of that. And you're seeing it here for sure. Wow. Seventh, litigation. Everybody sued us. The whole time I was there, though, we never settled a case or lost. We would just wait until the law firms got tired of losing money and quit. I know AI is being sued. I haven't heard of a single loss. I'd be surprised if they settled anything of consequence, or anything at all, because once they do, the word gets out, and then a floodgate opens, and then you're really dealing with it. You have to.
Interesting note: they have settled a couple of like Google just settled last week on some of these Gemini teen suicide cases. But yes.
Really?
Okay. That was surprising, I think.
I'm surprised too, because it could be that somebody was bringing it in a state where you never would want to go in front of a jury.
Yeah, I also think they are by settling, we're not reading the chat receipts from the teen suicides. Like, you know, they're keeping from the public the actual conversations. And my thought is those conversations have to be so nasty for them that they're just
well, settlement documents usually just sort of seal everything up. That's very common in all kinds of cases.
Yeah, they don't want a trial with those chats out.
Well, they don't want to stimulate a bunch of people from pursuing them. So I had kids say I've made this my life's work researching this thing, but I will say that I didn't pick up on any cases being sued, being reported. Back in the day with tobacco, of course, we didn't even have the internet, and so it just was a different world in terms of getting the word out.
Yeah,
my wife is a reference librarian her whole career, and she actually retired before libraries had, they had computers, but it wasn't much. It was some. Libraries today are full of computers with reference librarians that know how to do research on them. It's just a very different world. But we didn't see settlements back then, and I think that for the most part, you're not going to get much meat now.
When I was 15 years old, I decided I wanted to be a TV news reporter. There are 4 major national awards a TV news reporter can win: the Peabody, the DuPont Columbia, the National Emmy, and the National Edward R. Murrow Award. Before I was 33 years old, I had won all 4 as a local news reporter investigating Chesapeake Bay polluters.
Reporter John Sherman will accept the Peabody.
John Sherman.
But I left news in 2010 when the internet was really starting to radically change the news business. Now, algorithms dictate much of what we see, and in turn, much of what we think. That's why I am so excited today to talk to you about Ground News, the founding sponsor of the AI Risk Network and For Humanity, an AI Risk podcast. I first heard about Ground News when I noticed them sponsoring many of my favorite podcasts, but true confession, I never used the service until they approached me about sponsoring this podcast. So I tried it, and truly, I have been blown away. It is a fundamentally different way to consume news. Okay, next true confession. Before Ground News, I used to use Twitter to get all of my news from. My thought process was like, well, I'm reading the major publications and I'm reading the major writers, so, how bad could it be? It was really bad, like way worse than I thought. If you see anything often enough, it becomes normal, but these algorithms kind of lull you to sleep, and you lose your perspective. And I realized that was exactly what was happening to me. Ground News pulled back the curtain for me. Even for me, with 12 years experience working at news, it revealed things not just about the news itself, but about the way it was being covered that I wasn't really able to see. Sensationalism and bias were sneaking past my radar, and I didn't even know it. Ground News lets me compare headlines and know going in the biases of the publication, so before I ever read a word of the article, I understand the frame around it much better. So as an example, let's take the historic defeat of big tech in the US Senate when the proposed 10-year state AI law moratorium was crushed by a vote of 99-1 at 4 a.m. Ground News gives me 270 articles in one place, but then it gives me a distilled bias comparison. For me, I spend a ton of my time trying to think about how to effectively communicate with the general public about AI extinction risk. So this bias comparison shows me how the left was framing it up around environmental impacts, where the right was framing it around states' rights. That is really informative to me as I try to form my opinions and make decisions about how I'm going to communicate about AI extinction risk with the general public going forward. I also absolutely love this feature called Blind Spot. It shows you what stories are being covered super heavily by one side. These are stories in your algorithm you just might miss because you don't know they're out there. So, if you want to support the AI Risk Network, there is nothing more powerful you can do in terms of showing your support than subscribing to Ground News and using our custom code. There's a QR code right here. There's the URL right here. It's ground.news/AI risk. They will know everyone who's using that came from right here. It's incredibly important that we ring that bell a lot and get a lot of subscribers into Ground News. So please go sign up, do it. You'll be glad you did. Ground News and the AI Risk Network want to form a long-term relationship and partnership, but that depends on one thing: our viewers actually subscribing to Ground News. So I need you to go in to your phone, to your laptop, to wherever, ground.news/AI risk. Sign up. You'll be able to support the AI Risk Network tremendously and get the perspective on your news that you have been lacking. It is so important. Please do it. All right, now back to the show.
Let me ask you, why does AI safety, why has this AI safety community thought that treaties, laws, and regulations would make a difference?
I mean, I think, and so I'll speak for myself here. I grew up in Washington, D.C. My father worked on Capitol Hill in Congress for 45 years. My sister worked there for 20 years. I'm one of the biggest believers in good government you'll ever find. My father used to say that your government is neither your friend nor your enemy. Your government is your mirror, and it is as imperfect as you are, as your neighbor is. And so I've always been a believer that government is imperfect and the effort is brutal and nasty and hard, but that at the end of the day, it is laws and regulations and treaties that create the world order that we see around us. And honestly, Peter, you in the last 3 months have convinced me that my first 50 years of believing that we're just pushing in the wrong direction, and that there's like, you know, the 5D, the 9D chess that these corporations are playing, that people at the citizen do-gooder level like me, you know, think happens in a back smoky room and or doesn't happen or whatever. I don't know. But there's this sort of like Pollyanna, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, here's how a bill becomes a law vibe that is like, you know, if we just send the lobbyists in and meet with the right congressman and tell them their constituents are pissed, then show them a research, they'll do the right thing and they'll save the world. And you, in a matter of 3 months, have just crushed my belief that that is a thing. And I do want to point out for the audience here, we are going to be talking about what is hopeful about this and what we think can happen and how we actually can, protect humanity here in a little bit. But we first just want to really get into the sort of nasty game that big AI is playing and how it relates to big tobacco.
You know what? I was active in Washington for 40 years. I never met somebody who came that didn't come with that hope that you just expressed. People don't come to Washington to manipulate the public. They come to do the right thing. There are lots of people in agencies that care deeply. There are congressional staff people who care deeply.
Yeah.
And I think by and large, they do their best to sort of keep up appearances and hope. And I don't think it was always like this. When I first came to Washington, Reagan was in the White House, and he and Tip O'Neill, the Democratic, Speaker of the House, were great friends. They might beat each other up in the media, but they were great friends. And as were a lot of Democrats and Republicans, and they cared about this country, and they did some serious stuff. And then it sort of deteriorated for all sorts of reasons. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse. But I think where we are now is all of this, the treaties, laws, and regulations have become irrelevant. In some respects, government has, which I find very sad, because I think your father was right. I mean, government's a reflection of ourselves. What you're seeing now, unfortunately, I think is a reflection who we really are in terms of sort of the nastiness and the finger pointing and all of that. And that I hope very, very much that changes. It almost couldn't get much worse.
Yeah.
But let's explore this just a little bit more. Why do I think that it's become irrelevant? First of all, legislation is a process of negotiation, and things get watered down to achieve consensus. So I have seen really smart language be eliminated because two people wouldn't vote for it, and they needed both of them to get it through. So it gets watered down. Second, it takes a long time to make happen. And even when everybody is in favor of it, um, politicians are cautious. They build support. Sometimes it takes more than a year even. And then when you get to the regulatory stage, let's say you pass a law, but then the law is enforced by some agency, and they have to go through a regulatory process. And there's the Administrative Practices Act, which is very specific as to the steps you have to take. It's really a process more than specific timeframes. I've seen regulations take 15 years and still not be passed. It takes a long time. I've never seen it happen fast.
And real quick, Peter, like you were regulating a plant that grows from the ground that doesn't change. AI is a technology that is changing daily. So
I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that because I think that's ultimately the biggest reason why I don't think laws and regulations matter too much. But let's talk about plants that come from the ground. Marijuana.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of it. Yes. So have I. So big push to deregulate. It was pretty heavily regulated. I was in the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration's rules. It was classified as a very dangerous drug. All sorts of penalties for selling it, all sorts of penalties for owning a little bit more than you should. The states start coming in and saying, oh, no, we're going to allow it here for medicinal purposes. And then a bunch of them went over to recreational purposes, even though federal law prohibited it. Okay?
Yeah.
But what happened, and this shows you how bureaucrats can have the revenge. You take California, one of the first to go, Colorado, right up there with Massachusetts. The public health people got involved and said, but we don't know if this marijuana is safe to smoke because it was grown in soil and the soil may have contaminants and therefore you need to test all this stuff. And man, did that throw a monkey wrench in. So even when you're deregulating, this is complicated stuff. And there are a lot of people, sort of hiding in the weeds, pardon the pun, looking to undo you. So it's complicated. It's rarely everybody on the same page. Sometimes you're never finished. But let me go back to this stuff. Third is that in general, and this is one of my favorite points here, treaties, laws, and regulations come after businesses decide what they want to do, after they've invested already. So if you look at the fuel efficiency standards, the public wanted more fuel efficient cars because the cost of gasoline was going up. There was a lot of concern about the environment. Those companies were going to do it whether or not there were treaties and laws, regulations. They were going to do it. But because no one company wanted to go first, they got behind the regulation, so it was a level playing field.
So they all said it at the same time.
Everybody had to do it. Everyone wanted to do it, but nobody wanted to risk somebody not doing it. And so once a decision like that is made commercially, and I will tell you, a big part of my practice when I had my firm was doing just this sort of thing, is using regulation to carve out a market, because that's not illegal at all. You try to do that any other way, and you're probably breaking some antitrust laws or something. But no one's going to go back to coal or gas guzzling engines because of deregulation. These companies have spent billions and billions of dollars shifting away from that. They're not going to shift back. It's done. Now, my favorite story on this, and I don't know if this has ever been told anywhere, John, and after 50 years, I think I'm free to tell it.
Good. I love these Peter stories. Let's do it.
The cigarette companies realized back, I don't know, must have been in the 70s. It was before me, but I've heard this story from the people who did it, all of whom are dead today. They realized that TV and radio advertising had no effect on their market shares. You know, my gosh, Cool Cigarettes had its market share. Marlboro had its market share. The TV and radio commercials weren't moving the needle at all. They
Okay.
couldn't just agree to stop because of the anti-competition laws. You couldn't have a deal on the side, so they got Congress to ban it
For everybody.
for all the cigarette companies. But they were
Right.
all
No
behind
ads.
it. They all wanted it.
They
No
all
TV.
wanted the ban on advertising. It came
They
from them.
wanted the and yeah, and they wanted the ban because think of the money it saved them not having to advertise on TV and radio. And it didn't, and it
Man.
wasn't having an effect anyhow. So, fourth, in the extreme case, and let me just say that the AI companies, when they finally, and it's a point I'm going to make a little bit later, when the AI companies finally realize that if they just behave themselves, they're going to do a lot better, then you will see AI safety laws and they will be effective laws, but not until that. So, fourth, in the extreme case, this gets to your point earlier, in the extreme case that an unfriendly law or regulation is somehow adopted, it happens. Companies find and exploit loopholes. Now, back in the day, one of the cigarette companies found a way to beat the tar nicotine test. Because on every pack of cigarettes, it gives tar nicotine numbers. But
Yeah.
what they did was they were able to figure out how to give you more tar nicotine, which improved the taste. So even though they were maybe advertising as a low tar nicotine cigarette, they were actually giving you a full blast of this stuff.
Because they just did something to get around the test, some technical thing to get through
Yeah.
testing loop.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the other companies, when they discovered it, went nuts. It was open warfare. Okay. But they did. They figured it out. Today, tech companies would have a field day. You'd write a law, and they would, before the ink was dry, they would have 10 different ways around it. And again, you look at lack of specificity. Everybody's for safety. Okay. What's that? I say I'm safe. You say you're safe. They're two completely different things. But if the law pins them down, they figure it out. It's not hard to do, and especially for them. It is their business model is to constantly innovate. And again, laws and regulations mostly benefit business. They shield companies from product liability lawsuits because if you have a problem with your product and you say, "Hey, I'm meeting the regulation," that actually carries some weight in court. If the regulatory agency was wrong, not my problem. I'm meeting their standard. I have no choice. They use it to suppress competition. It's very effective. I could tell you stories, but I am under some NDAs with the clients who when I had my firm, and I honor that. It creates stability in marketplaces. If it was just chaos, it would really affect share prices and stuff. The fact that industries are regulated, like drugs are regulated, medical devices are regulated, like that, creates stability. Okay, so don't it's a joke to say that business is against regulation. Not at all. Business is behind a lot of it, and it sometimes doesn't turn out the way they'd like, but they are behind it. What I found fascinating, I've known this a long time because I've used this before, but regulation is believed to have come from barbers, like barbershops, in the 1400s, who formed guilds to block competition. They set the rules themselves, and they kept other people coming in as barbers because they didn't want the competition. Goes back 1400s.
Wow. So the barbers first started the third party standard to say, you're,
Yeah.
I got a little a permit from the city taped to my wall in my barber shop today.
And if you don't have one, you can't do it. You can't be a barber unless you have that little thing.
Whereas me, the consumer, I look at the thing on the wall and I think, oh, this is because they need to make sure they wash the scissors and brushes properly or something to keep me safe.
They probably would anyhow. But it's and let me tell you, it's not hard to get a license for a barbershop today. I mean, you can get one. In my own little town in Northern Virginia, we probably have 10 of them. I don't know who
Right.
goes to all of them, but
Yeah.
as in terms of the concept of regulation, that's how old it is, and that's where it came from. Today, though, most regulation is written by industry committees and then adopted by regulators. And there's a fairly set process on how to do that in a way that's transparent and balanced. And by and large, it works good. But, toasters are regulated. How? Well, because there's technical committees of companies that make toasters that sit down and say, you don't want this, and you do want this. And, we don't want to have a lot of fires with toasters. And you want people burning themselves on toasters. And they write it all up. And it ends up at Underwriters Laboratory. And Underwriters Laboratory, a little UL thing on the toaster, basically says, yeah, you meet these standards. And then there are laws that say you have to have UL. I mean,
Right.
it all, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that's what you got going here.
Let's focus on UL for just a second, like as sort of a, think about that as like an AI safety thing. It is a third-party organization that certifies that the electronic products we use won't burn down our houses. Is the idea that there could be some sort of equivalent thing or how to relate that idea to AI safety?
Sure. Well, first of all, there's another organization called the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, ANSI. And it sets the rules for what they call consensus codes and standards development. And it really is a terrific organization. And it says, you can have a technical committee to look at things. You have to get it approved. There's a vote on that to make sure it's legitimate. It has to be balanced. You have to have consumers on it. You have to have users, customers. You have to, industries that are buying something and industries that are making it. And yeah, I forget what the other rules are, but it's a legitimate process, and it's the only thing that would work under the circumstances. You could apply a lot of that to this. There's no reason why not. The only downside is that your average consumer would be so outmatched from a technology standpoint, it would be hard for them to keep up. But there are workarounds there because you can have experts representing consumers that would be every bit up to the task. But yeah, John, absolutely, you could do that.
Super interesting. And who would it could the AI safety, like the AI safety groups that are now so focused on laws, treaties, and regulations, would they be better to be focused on making an underwriters laboratory for AI?
Yeah, I think going that route would be more productive, and frankly more collaborative. I don't think that the political climate just now would be conducive to it, but I do think that it could be headed there. And sure,
That structurally, that is a more structurally fruitful path than laws, treaties, regulations.
well, look, I think laws, treaties, and regulations are a waste of time. So, I mean, this is if I was forced to say what would be worth looking at and could have some chance of going, sure.
Yeah.
And
All right, and I want to pick at that. I want to pick at that one thing, the idea of a waste of time. Like, do you believe that it is literally a waste of time and should be discontinued? Or, all the work that's going on in AI safety on laws, treaties, and regulations? Or is it a needed veneer to all of the other things that you would try to do with the businesses? And if that layer were lacking, it would smell wrong or something.
I think it's a waste of time, but I will say this, that
say it. That's what you believe. I want to hear.
I mean, yeah. Look, there are times when in a very sophisticated world of politics where you make your opponent believe that you're doing something that you're not doing at all. I mean, it's sort of a head fake, and then you're really doing something effective in addition to it, because what you have here with the AI companies, I think, are some leaders who are so arrogant that they believe they know exactly what's happening here, and they wouldn't listen to any other version of it. If that's what you're doing, that's not so much of a waste of time. But I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. I personally wouldn't spend any. I wouldn't spend any money on it, and it's not going to produce anything. So, I mean, I keep running into people, not just in the AI community, but I mean, I've advised some very, very smart business people who will say, okay, now, Sparber, if this happens, and if this happens, and if this happens, and if this happens, don't you have to agree this is going to happen? And I will say, absolutely. Except this isn't going to happen, and this isn't going to happen, and this isn't going to happen. I mean, they come up with this incredible construct of how this stuff works, and they're just wrong. Doesn't work. They've never done it.
And
they
this
just
and
assume
it's
it
like
works.
The people's record versus big industry is pretty terrible. Like big industry
I'm
pretty
sorry,
much
say that
does what it
again.
wants. The record of the people versus big industry is pretty terrible. Big industry does what it wants. Like, it pains me to say it. It's a brutal reality, but like that's pretty much the way stuff goes. Yeah.
Well, it's the old golden rule. Who has the gold rules? And in large publicly traded companies, they're very, very sensitive to the shareholders, and they're very sensitive to their corporate lawyers. So it's not like they're doing whatever they want. They're doing what their lawyers tell them they have to do, and they're trying to keep their shareholders happy. And then a distant third are their customers, really.
Yeah.
But you look at I've been meaning to really study what's gone on at Boeing, for example, where man, do you have lawyers involved over there? And man, do you have shareholders involved over there? And man, do you have some of their large customers involved over there?
Yeah.
And
And
they
public safety as the issue as well.
public safety, share prices, you name it. They have an extended supply chain that apparently is a mess because that's in order to stay competitive. They outsourced a lot of stuff to companies that weren't really up to it. I mean, it's a very, very complicated thing to make a 777. Believe me, it has to be okay. But when you look at that company, the management isn't. I would reject the notion that the management is doing whatever it wants. It is being whipped around by so many different people. It's trying to figure out what to do, and
Yeah.
that's as much it. Now there are some industries. There definitely are some industries that do. But my firm represented Ford for a while, and Bill Ford, who was the chairman at the time, told his entire team, "We are going to be fossil fuel free by such and such a year." He was chairman. The company had his name on the door. I'm sure he owned a lot of stock. That's what he wanted to do. It was totally in line with the public, and they totally ignored him, and he was out of his job probably 3 years later, 4 years later, or something like that. The pressures on these large corporations are incredibly tough. The competitive pressures, the legal pressures, and so you can't say they're doing whatever they want, but they're not necessarily doing what you and I want. You know.
Yes.
I don't think.
Yes. All right. So you have, and I very much support your doing so, proceeded to dump 75 buckets of rain on the parade of AI safety here in the first part of our conversation here. I do want to get to a little bit of the hope part because I think it's fascinating. And I think, one of the reasons I'm so excited to know you, Peter, is not because you've changed my mind. It's because you put me on to the path that I think will work. And I think that we can make a big difference for AI safety. And I think we can protect humanity from loss of control, runaway AI, building systems that are smarter than us, all that kind of stuff that we lose control of. And the way is making unsafe AI bad for business. That is the path.
Well, I think that's right, but be careful of your pronouns.
Okay.
I don't know what kind of leverage the safety community has on these large companies.
Not much.
And so, not much, if any. Some maybe. Some maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. I think is this hopeless? No. I don't think anything political is hopeless. What I can tell you is I see some really interesting stuff going on that leads me to believe that what you just said you're basically asking the question, will these large companies ultimately control their worst instincts? Are they? Do they have a good business reason to do what's right? And to do what's right is a complex question here. Um, because I think I've been around AI for a long time. I've been on boards, and actually I was chairman of a company that was using AI extensively. But it was a great tool in the hands of very, very smart engineers and scientists. It's a great tool, and they would take a look at some of the insights coming forward, and they would go, "Oh, that's stupid. There's no way that's true." Or over here, "Oh my gosh, we never saw that. That's fabulous." And so, a friend of mine who was the head of innovation for the Naval Surface Warfare Lab over in Carteret, Maryland, guy named Grant Jensen, he talks about human-machine partnering, because he says humans are really good at certain things, machines are really good at things, and you want to take the strength of both. And so, what is the right thing? If it's being done that way for noble purposes, you're elevating workers, you're adding to the dignity of work, you're not displacing people, you're not playing games with people, you're not doing these terrible fake videos of cats dancing and stuff with it. I mean, it's some of them are funny. So my vision is, how does it get to that? How does it get to the point where a publicly traded company, of which almost all of these are, gets so much pressure from shareholders, from their internal lawyers, that all of a sudden they say, "Hey, we're going to fire the CEO because he's letting this other stuff happen. Clean up your act or you're gone." And CEOs in the United States last, on average, about 4 years. I mean, firing a CEO is no big deal. In fact, I think that guy Sam Altman was fired. He managed to fight his way back in. Sure. But I don't think it's hopeless. I was fascinated how Abigail Spanberger, our new governor in Virginia, made a huge campaign issue out of the electric rates going up because of data centers. She got elected, and that was one of the big issues she pushed. And what made it so interesting is that Northern Virginia is home to the largest concentration of data centers in the world, by far. Lots and lots of taxes they're paying, which must be a politician's dream, and yet she was able to turn that into something that got her elected because people are angry about that.
Yep.
All about AI safety. All over the country. And there's been some interesting stuff that's happened in Michigan. I was reading that the Public Utility Commission basically told some developer that we're not the people who are paying for electricity in Michigan aren't going to pay for these large transmission lines. If you want them, you're going to have to pay for them. I mean, it's stuff like that that gets people's attention. I mean, and every week there's something in the news about some community getting upset about these data centers. I have rarely seen an article where anybody was, welcoming them with open arms. And when you have a politician who has, that politician puts himself at risk.
Can I pause you real quick, Peter, and just sort of get into this a little bit? So the AI safety traditional perspective on data centers has been that, our biggest concern is extinction. And there's a different remedy for data centers than there is for extinction risk. Therefore, no one who cares about extinction should ever talk about data centers. And my new belief in 2026 is that is dead wrong, that there are people who are really upset right now about AI, and it's not about extinction. There's a very small pocket of people who are upset about that, but there's a much bigger pool of people who are upset about their teenagers dealing with suicides, talking to GPT on their phone. My kid has a phone. They're talking to this model. I have no idea what the conversation is. I'm hearing about these teen suicides. I've got this data center going next to my school. There's another one for the shopping mall. I don't know if AI is going to take my job. I don't know if my kids are going to have a job when they graduate college. All these kinds of things. But I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who's a really smart guy, really a lot of insight into this kind of stuff. And he was like, the front door is the extinction risk case. The back door is this data center harm to teens, all this kind of stuff. he's like, we need to deal with the people. We need to use the front door because we have very little time, and the extinction risk is so important that that's the only thing that we can be talking about. And what I said to him is, I was like, there's nobody at the front door, but around back, there are thousands of people gathering, having meetings, pissed off, organizing. So the trickle of people at the extinction risk front door versus the mass of people forming, pissed off about all the other things, to me, that is where the energy is, and that AI safety needs to galvanize that energy and bring it into the bigger tent. Your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think that's right. Like I think back to the gas crisis back in the, gosh, when was it? The 70s. You couldn't buy gasoline, so you couldn't drive anywhere. This is basically, if you don't want them to mess around with AI and do horrible things, take away their toys. I mean, that's what I would do if I was dealing with this. And so much of the money that's been raised has been raised for these new data centers, these really big ones. The investors, of course, want their return. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is too that what gets very, very tricky. I don't know how we would have handled it back in the days in the day of tobacco, was when it starts getting very local, little towns. You don't even know who to talk to. You don't even know it's happening. And then these little towns start finding each other, and it gets worse and worse. It just is totally out of control fast. And so the AI safety community is doing all this stuff with words like existential risk that nobody, if you ask 100 Americans what that term means, they wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yep. But you don't want one of these things in your backyard. I mean, I live very close to Loudon. I drive out there to meet with some friends. I'm driving for miles and miles and miles at these concrete bunkers. Man, I wouldn't be happy with that if I lived out there. And I know people that live out there who hate them. So
absolutely. Not to mention they're little incinerators for jobs. It's a giant,
they don't hire anybody at all. I mean, the construction, construction workers.
You're the lawyer living next to the data center. The thing that's going to take your job is going to be coming from a place just like that. There, there is very much that concern, but I think largely there's confusion about what AI even is. I would bet there are certainly politicians who have voted on AI without knowing what AI is. Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
I mean, there was a gas that we represented called halon that was used for fire protection. Very, very effective gas, used in a lot of applications, used in a lot of data, big computer centers back in 80s, 90s. It's been banned since. And a tax was proposed by a legislator from Long Island. Because he thought it was halogen, which is used inside of headlights in cars. He had no idea it had any role in fire protection at all. Meanwhile, we just ate him alive with that. So, yeah, I mean, nobody does their homework. But this is like nailing Jello to a wall, though. You can't get ahead of it. You absolutely can't get ahead of it. And you don't know where it's going to come from. You don't know who are these people? Who cares about? Well, I'll tell you who cares about these people. Local politicians, mayors. Enough mayors get upset, and you've got members of Congress, state legislators. They start getting concerned about it. It's impossible to contain. And I suspect that's what's going on. So the AI safety guys are dealing with a term that nobody understands, and these guys are talking about, hey, you're screwing up my property values. I mean, I got to tell you, what I wouldn't know how to stop it myself. I wouldn't even try. And these guys aren't even necessarily aware of how dangerous this is. I think and we're beginning to see this just generally. I've been tracking this for a while because I've used AI, is that politicians from both parties may start competing for who is most anti-AI because all of a sudden it becomes, it becomes like a great theme. Politicians will
Yes.
grab a good theme and they'll compete to say, "Oh, I'm more anti-AI than you are." They don't even know what it is. Okay, but I
Yeah.
think you're going to see that, and I've seen some evidence of members of both parties already headed down that road. I have seen very, very few politicians defend it publicly. I haven't seen it. So,
No. Yeah.
and this is an election year, so this ought to be really chaotic, and it's going to be something to watch. But I don't think this gets settled in Washington or Sacramento. But I'll tell you this: if an electrical safety inspector has a bad day, these are guys with clipboards who are the bureaucrat's bureaucrat. And if you're supposed to have an electrical connection with a copper screw on top of it tightened down in a counterclockwise direction and you did it the wrong way, he'll stop the whole project until you do it the right way. And he could delay the construction a month because he won't even come back for a month to do another inspection. This happens routinely in construction. And if you get some lobbyist or politician pressuring the guy, that 1 month turns into 3 months. They don't get pushed around. And nobody messes with them because everybody knows how important they are. So here is this little guy in the middle of nowhere could bring one of these projects to a grinding halt just because they piss him off.
And so let's draw. I want to drill into this real specifically. So the theory of change is that electrical inspectors, parents.
No, that's not the point I'm making.
Okay.
Electrical inspector just doing his or her job.
Yeah. Yeah.
He lives to find things he rejects. He doesn't. You don't have
Yes.
to do anything.
Totally.
And so
But I'm just saying,
when
you're
talking,
saying that these little electrical inspectors all piled up could bring down the biggest enterprise on the planet, right?
one of them could. If there's an, I mean, think about how many electrical connections there are in a data center. So if you have an electrical safety inspector in some town, I mean, some of the stuff's being done in rural counties where they may only have one of these guys, and he's being pulled 10 different directions. And there's some home builder out there who isn't getting this guy's attention, and the homes he's building aren't getting built because the inspector's not a build. I mean, let me tell you, electrical safety inspector just has a rotten job because everybody's always complaining. And then he goes in, and here is this massive place, and he's just in a bad mood. Don't put him in a worse mood. And I'm just saying, it's not about organizing electrical safety inspectors to do anything. They just do their job. Now, my point is too around construction, and I've had a lot to do with construction. Every big project starts with a very tight production schedule that by the end of the first day has already been violated. Nothing goes smoothly in construction. You have chronic labor shortages. You have a total mess with supply chains with all sorts of materials, copper particularly right now, which is used extensively in electric and also in plumbing, is really in short supply. Sometimes it's very hard to even get. Well, you might have a bunch of it coming into an area, but it's not going to initially go to you. It's a mess. And then because of that, everybody sues in construction. Constantly, everybody's suing everybody. And then all of a sudden, some poor slob falls off of a scaffold and breaks his hip, and the whole thing shuts down because OSHA comes in and has to investigate it. So these construction schedules get out of whack very fast and only get worse. And again, don't forget that these data centers are the lifeblood of AI, of the AI industry.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of these guys are all that familiar with how hard it is to build anything. It took, and even getting permits, it took my wife and me almost a year to get a permit for a screened porch on the back of our house. I mean, it's not easy. And so, to the extent that these investors are expecting a return by, I mean, some of these things are supposed to be up and running fully by this year, 28, 30. Okay. We'll see, you know, but I think maybe the most important reason that I would have hope is that the AI industry is really even the oldest of these are relatively new companies in a lot of respects, and driven by personalities rather than real governance. And they lack the maturity to understand that money can be a huge liability, too much money. Um, it allows for enormous sloppiness. When I was with tobacco, we were very, very mindful to be careful how we used money, even though we had as much as we needed, because you get sloppy. Um, the one exception here may be this guy Bezos, who has dealt with so much as he's built Amazon. He's a pretty bright guy. He owns the Washington Post. But the rest of them, I think, are just they're drinking too much of their own bathwater. They're just not they're not really politically savvy, observant people. Some of them much worse than others. And, you know, about a third of Americans think that billionaires are terrible for America. That's a very, very large percentage in an election year. And the more these billionaires flash their wealth, the deeper the resentment. So I think the industry itself will start seeing value and behaving better, because you're going to have a lot of pressure on investors, a lot of pressure on boards. The lawyers are going to jump inside and start reining in some of this stuff. And so, fair question, how fast might that happen and when? I don't have a clue. But I think when it happens, it's going to happen very suddenly. And I think it's going to be triggered not by the so-called AI bubble bursting. I've changed my views on this, John. I think it's going to be triggered by one of these big companies seeing an advantage in behaving better and getting very...
Yes.
This exact thing happened in tobacco when Philip Morris, which was the largest of the cigarette companies, abruptly decided to actively discourage cigarette smoking. And I know the guy who sort of quarterbacked all of that, and that left the other cigarette companies in their dust. It was a major problem for the others, because Philip Morris basically came out and said, yeah, cigarette smoking is bad for you. You shouldn't do it. They started pivoting to other businesses. They actually bought a vaping company, which I think they've since sold. But Philip Morris is fairly diverse. It's called Altria. Very well run company, and they just decided one day this is going nowhere, and we want to get out of it. So, but when I see these tobacco strains being used by lobbyists who weren't born when we created them, maybe their parents weren't born when we created them. I mean, I have to tell you, I laugh at it, because our most important strategy is how fast we could adapt quickly to circumstances. I've covered some of that. I don't think today's political consultants really understand enough of the thinking to be able to see the circumstances, even if the facts are in front of them. They're basically hired to kill bills. They'll never become laws anyhow. I don't even know what they do or why they get paid. They mostly get small stuff done at the margins. The shame of it is, I think, that used properly, AI is a very important tool, and I just think the AI industry has done a terrible job of telling that story.
All right, so let's bring it home here. So you have said in the course of this conversation that the basic main thrust of the AI safety world since its inception of new laws, regulations, and treaties to protect the public from AI risk and AI harm is a waste of time, and that real change will come from the board and the C-suite when risk and doubt are injected into those spaces, and they are the catalyst for the change towards safety that we need.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody who's put so much into this, but if I had been hired by the giants of AI safety, that's what I would have told them. I mean, I often told CEOs of large companies that what they were doing wasn't working, and here's why. And some of them didn't want to hear it, and some of them were desperate to hear it. It all depended. That's just my personal view. But it is based on 50 some years of watching this stuff
Yeah.
and doing a lot of it.
Maybe the silver lining is that what you think will actually work might even be easier than what you think won't work.
Well, I think it'll be a lot easier because I think a lot of it's happening without them doing a thing. I mean,
A little more? Like without what you think
well,
the
I mean,
inertia of the project is just that
did any of the AI safety people talk to Abigail Spanberger about using that issue? And no, I'm sure they didn't. She just found that on her own. Are the AI safety people running around to some of these farm communities stirring things up? I'm sure they're not.
they don't
It's
view it as
happening.
an
It's just
safety. They
happening.
view it as almost counterproductive, as a
Well,
waste focus.
all the more reason. I guess what I'm saying, you asked if it would be easier to go that route. What I'm saying is, yeah, because it's happening anyhow without them doing anything. It's just a question.
Right. People are pissed. They are motivated by this.
Yeah. You don't have to educate people about property values.
Yes. Right. Right.
You know, or electric. I mean, this is like inflation.
Yeah.
Is like such an issue, and electric prices are a big part of it. You don't have to tell people that. They know that. They hate it. And what's interesting is how some politicians are actually just tossing the data centers in there. But I can tell you that the public utility commissions are very, very aware of it. And you don't have to. AI safety people don't even probably know about most of this stuff. So if they're screaming about existential risk and they're trying to get laws and stuff passed, if I were advising, let's say, any of these big AI companies, and I wouldn't, and I haven't, I would tell them, oh, let them do whatever they want. It's not having any effect. Who cares? That's what I would say. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I've talked to some lovely people and some passionate people in the AI safety community just since I've known you. And they're like everybody else. Everybody, remembers how a bill becomes law from their civics class. And it's wrong. Doesn't work. You may have one time, but it sure hasn't for a long time.
Listen, I can tell you from our couple of months here, pretty intense times together. You are a man of deep faith. You are a man who loves his family a ton. And I'm glad that I know you. And I am so glad that the opportunity has occurred for you to say to AI safety world what you have said. And to me, and to change my opinion about this, because I'm shocked at how little I fight your ideas in my soul. They are counter to everything I have believed for 50 years. But you have said to me, like, no, this is why the things that you can't understand happen. And I'm like, man, like, there's a layer to the world that is obscured from almost everyone. And I feel like I've peeked behind the curtain and I've seen it and I can't unsee it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just
it's
really
intentionally intentionally behind the curtain. I mean, public is already outraged by special interest lobbyists and stuff. They have no idea how absolutely out of control it is. But
right.
Just I want to finish this because I have to.
Yeah, please.
As you know, I'm in Rome, Italy.
Yes. Ciao.
And had a lunch that should have put me totally to sleep before we started here, and we're headed off to something else. But just for the record, I have never had a cigarette in my mouth. I have never smoked. My wife has never smoked. My kids have never smoked. My grandkids better not ever smoke. Smoking is, and I was of the opinion when I worked for them, why would anybody smoke? I mean, from a standpoint of personal responsibility, I never understood why people smoked. I also don't believe that people are automatically addicted. Some people can't quit. Other people quit rather easily, I gather. Some people get lung cancer, other people don't. But why would you want to drag something like that into your lungs? It just didn't make any sense to me then. It really never has. I just was a hired gun, John.
What a world. Peter, I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so glad that I hope everyone in AI safety is going to watch this and at least consider what you're saying and hopefully take it and make it, a practical action plan. That's what we're going to be focusing on doing here in 2026 here on AI Risk.
Well, these are all the people you've introduced to me are all really good people, and I wish them well. I just wish they would sort of get their heads out of their butt on some of the stuff. So, what can I tell you?
AI safety world. This is it. No heads and butts. That's our goal for 2026. No.
It should be it should be everybody's goal for 2026.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
John. Well, I hope this was helpful.
Peter, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Okay, bye.
So, what do you all think? Let me know in the comments. If you have questions for Peter, put them in the comments, and I will try to take a selection of them to him and get them answered directly from him. Making this hard turn away from new laws and treaties and towards making unsafe AI bad for business is my calling in 2026. I am an independent journalist. I am seeking the truth. The truths I have discovered in the last 3 years have made me an advocate for reducing AI risk. That spirit of combined investigation and advocacy has led me here. I believe if it is legal and it is nonviolent, it should be on the table. Given the power and strength of our opposition, this seems so obvious, and yet it would be radical in traditional AI safety circles. Those days have got to end. That approach is tactical surrender. So making unsafe AI bad for business will be our work here at For Humanity and at Guardrail Now, the nonprofit that funds this channel. What does that work actually look like? Stay tuned. So much more to come in the coming weeks and months. There is one thing I could use your help on right now, though. Go to guardrailnow.org/harm. At Guardrail Now, we're going to be asking people to bring us their stories of real-world, right-now AI harm. Teens being led into suicides and homicides by chatbots, towns where electric bills are soaring and people are filling town halls, lines around the block for meetings about data center construction, seniors being scammed by AI fraudsters, jobs going away forever. All of these are growing, agitated, powerful, organizing groups on the on-ramp to becoming AI safety aware. If we meet them where they are, hear them out, they will be much more open to our message on extinction risk. My heart, my gut, and my brain are screaming at me, this is the way, the only way. AI safety has been asking, where are our allies? Why aren't more people listening? We're telling everyone the most important thing. It's about connecting the dots. We're dealing with real people, humans. It is all right here in front of us, but I can't do it alone. I'm going to need help from all of you and many more. So I'm asking you to please join me. It takes money to make this all happen. Please donate if you can. And I'll be taking this message on the road in February and throughout 2026. I will be at PausCon in Brussels and then at Stuart Russell's International Association for Safe and Ethical AI Conference in Paris at the end of February, back to back. It would be much easier for me to go to those places singing the Laws and Treaties song like everyone else. But this is too important to go along to get along. I will be bringing a radically different perspective on AI safety in 2026, and I would very much appreciate your support. Okay, my friends, please always remember, AI safety is not someone else's problem. It is yours, and it is mine. And there is no way we're going to let a few thousand people wipe the other 8 billion of us off the face of the earth. No way. For Humanity, I'm John Sherman. I will see you very soon.